Happy New Year, everybody, to our friends and to all of those who come on this podcast to hear our subject matters. We want to wish everybody a happy 2025 and a new season with the Paranormal Rangers. Today we have Jonathan Dover and Stan Milford Jr. Uh, we are so grateful that everybody got through the holiday season, and we are grateful that we could be here with you with a new season. We have exciting things happening this year coming forward as we have our podcast move forward. We have many subjects and guests coming on to look forward to. And so we're all happy to be here. One of the things that we would like to discuss in the moment is what's happening and give our condolences to what's happening into the state of California. We have friends and associates who have lived there and are going through a really challenging time. But we but our prayers and our thoughts and our hopes goes out to them in rebuilding up the area that has been damaged. And any thoughts, gentlemen, today on what you think about what's going on?
Well, John is an LA kid, so
Right.
it really hits home for him and his family. So thank God, you know, um, the people I think we know, they have survived the fires, although there's been a lot of loss of life, and our prayers go out to those families and the people that lost property. Some people lost everything except the shirt on their back, and probably
Right.
some that lost that too. I don't know, but anyway, John.
Yeah, wildfires. Both Stan and I, when we were doing law enforcement, as Navajo Rangers, we actually went through red card fire training, and we had to be certified every year. So we had to do a pack test, we had to take classes, and we had to do this to even work in the fire environment. Um, when you find out that a crown fire in pine trees can run at more than 100 miles an hour and it creates its own wind, you can't outrun that in a car.
Mm-mm.
And when the fire catches up to your car, it actually sucks the air out, and so the car dies. Then you just burn up in the car.
So there's
Um,
no oxygen for your engine to be able to combust.
So we were told that the fire vehicles that are up there for wildland fire, they carry oxygenated fuel, and that way they can keep running in the fire environment. Um, so there's a lot of things. We even when we trained, we were taught how to use the fire shelters, and you had to dig yourself a little trench, lay down in it, cover yourself up. And at one point, one of our officers took his gun belt off and threw it away and then got under the deal. And the instructors asked him, "How come you pulled off your gun belt?" And he said, "Because I don't want my pepper spray to explode while I'm under there and, and drive you out into the flames." Um, so we had to do that all the time and do a mile and a half pack test. Uh, as fast as you could walk is the how they did it. If you broke into a run, you had to stop and get disqualified and have to do it again. So we were in the fire environments, providing evacuation stuff and taking names of people that were evacuating so we could compile a list. And when families contacted the authorities, they'd be able to say, yeah, they were contacted on this date at this time, and this is where they went. And we even identified people that caused some of the fires. You
Mm.
know, I was at a roadblock one time. We were checking people's names off, and writing them down. People coming out from where the fire was, And this grandma sitting in the back seat tells me, she says, "I think I started that fire." And of
Oh,
course, my ears go up, and I'm going, "Really?"
grandma.
I says, "What happened?" And she says, "Oh, the mosquitoes were really bad, and so I lit some cow dung on fire, and to drive the mosquitoes away, and the cow dung got out of hand, and the fire took off." And lo and behold, when the investigators traced it back, they found it started at her residence. So, we were able to identify who started that fire. Um, so these fires, they're nothing to laugh about.
Mm-mm.
Um, really, really serious stuff. I mean, you can easily get killed in them. As we saw how dangerous it got, it's almost like a firestorm. Growing up in Los Angeles, we're always worried about brush fires because they can go. And we where we lived, we had a hill on the back of the house, and at the top of that hill we have mustard plants, and we had to cut those down above the fence line, uh, kind of create a fire barrier up there. And the fire department used to come around and inspect and tell you, you've got so many days to comply. And of course, me and my brother were the ones that were chopping weeds up there, and my sister too. They made us kids work hard, and so we got to take the brush cutting tools up there and chop everything down and bundle it up and take it out. But fire danger is real.
It is.
I
You know,
can't stress that.
and Jonathan, I'm really glad you were trained, you and Stan, as part of the being a ranger and taking care of the land. It's really interesting. When I was up there shooting up at Skinwalker in the area, of the Uinta Basin, a fire broke out, and it was several weeks before it got contained. And saw the pattern. It creates its own weather system. So I think this is what these Californians are dealing with, is their own weather system, unbeknownst to themselves, knowing that, like you said, the oxygen goes out of everything, and it just smothers everything. And then with the pine and the brush that they have there's an oil that seeps out of the pine, and it's easily ignited. So, we're hearing all this blame going on towards the government. We don't want to get, too much into that, but the blaming of this and that, not enough water in the reservoir, preparedness. And what you and Stan got was a lot of preparedness. And I wish you guys could have been there containing that, helping contain that, or giving others preparedness lessons of what to do, what not to do. But next, once in a great while, a home was saved. People got lucky, you
Well,
know.
the
John,
reason
John,
the reason we were trained was not to actually fight the fire. We had all the Nomex clothing, the helmets, the goggles, the fire shelters, the backpacks, everything that you need. Our purpose was to operate inside of the fire and get the evacuations done, so people wouldn't be lost. So we would
but
literally go door to door.
but we were trained. If we had to work the fire line, we could do that. And matter of fact, at least 3 times, I myself on responses because of a lack of uh, firefighters on hand initially. I actually worked the fire line with the fire crews, so
And
it
and there
we
are
were
times
capable of doing that. Yeah.
and there are times when being out on patrol, if there's a lightning strike, you would get there. We would identify where the fires were in the forest and go out there and set up tape on the side of the road to show the fire vehicles where they could get in and get to that fire. And so we'd leave tape markers. I still got a roll of that tape. Um, we'd leave these markers, showing how to get to these places. And sometimes you were the only one there, and if it was a small fire, lightning strike, you might be able to get it contained right on the spot. Um, so there's specialist tools that you have to carry. Um,
Mm.
it's and it you have to understand how the fire works. And like I said, our main job was to do evacuations, but you had to know about that. Um, we've seen police officers in their vehicles drive out in what's called the black, where there's hot ashes,
And
and
widowmakers.
and
Yeah,
widowmakers,
yeah,
and we were fearful for those guys because you could bust your tires if the ground's too hot and
yeah,
you're just driving around in the ash out there. And then what are you going to do? You're going to try to get out walking in your high speed, low drag tennis shoe boots, and your feet are going to get burned.
Right.
So, second, third degree burns coming out, or you're going to step on a burnt stump,
hmm,
where the stump used to be, and put your leg right into a hole of hot coals all the way up to your middle.
yeah.
So
Potential
not,
dangers out there.
yeah, there are dangers,
You know,
and
I'm not a train, but I wanted to thank all the firefighters that have come from all over the United States to help contain this fire. They're the ones that are working major shifts 24/7, and they're trying to contain as much as they can. My condolences goes out to them too as well, and for their efforts to go out there and contain this fire. But for a person like myself who would be a resident or consumer, one of the things I've learned in watching these media broadcasts is always have a 72-hour emergency kit near your one of your exits of your house, and get that all planned out, an evacuation plan as well. What I noticed that the people who were prepared and the ones who even saved their own houses had done some preparedness to some extent, and so at least you have your documents. Jonathan and I were having a previous conversation before the show. Put it in a fire proof container, sort of cabinet or a lock box or something like that, and put your most valuable things that you value. Be able to make sure that you can carry those preparedness items. Food,
Having
being
it,
water being
having
important.
having a go bag ready for each of
Uh-huh.
your family
yeah,
members, even the children. Having spare clothing and some
Right.
toiletries, toothbrush, toothpaste, something to be able to wash your face with. All of these kind of things, really, in this day and time, we need to have those things staged and ready to go. Maybe in a some type of airtight container in the garage or something like that, so it's ready to go, because we never know. I mean, in this situation, yes, it was wildland fire, but
could be flood.
yeah, it could be floods, it could
Yeah.
be tornadoes. We get tornadoes anywhere and everywhere in this country today. Weather patterns have changed, and you're seeing things like tornadoes in places that you never seen them before. John responded, and I've responded to tornadoes on the Navajo reservation, where in the past there hadn't been in hundreds of years. So um, it's best to be prepared and thinking about what if, and having a plan, where your family members are going to meet up. In that situation, your cell phone systems might go down. uh,
Hmm.
you just don't know, and so we need to start being more prepared, instead of waiting until a disaster happens and figuring out what are we going to do, what are we going to do. That's
Hmm.
not the time to do that. It's have a plan ahead of time.
I went on to FEMA's website, and they have a be preparedness kit. Be prepared for any hazards, and to your point, even snowstorms. floods, tornadoes, everything that's mentioned here, the wildfires and everything. It has that information. It's not comprehensive. It's 37 pages, and it tells you, at least gives you the basics. And if you want to go into deeper, there are books out there that help you prepare, for your family, even for your neighbors. I did that in 2000 and 2000, when we were having issues here in the United States with Y2K, got my community prepared. And so some of us have a background and training in those preparedness ways. But if you want to go, there's so much information out there, and make sure that you take care of your community members and that you're communicating with them, even though you haven't talked to your neighbor maybe in years. Maybe you have a plan, and if this happens, we can assist one another. Find a center in your community.
Even
And
with your finances. I mean,
Right.
having some cash money on hand to be able to utilize in these
Right.
kind of events. Your ATMs systems may not be working. There may not be any internet access. You just don't know. So it's best to have a plan and having every conceivable, what could come up and what would be a factor, like finances, those kind of things in planning.
and one of the things that isn't being said or really talked about that much is that yeah, the fires have gone through some areas or are burned to the ground, and everybody has this idea, well, people can just go back and rebuild, and it's not
Not
really
immediately.
like that. The truth of it, and the thing that doesn't get reported, is that all the infrastructure for all those residential areas is gone. There are no power lines. There are no the water sources have been compromised, the pipes and everything. They're the gas lines, the mains have been shut down, and they're going to have to redo all the gas lines, all the sewer lines, everything,
That could
and
take
get it.
up to a year or something. We don't know.
So just so you know, it's going to be a long, hard road to get back to normalcy. And I'm sure everybody's looking at building materials now and how much, and the insurance
Ah,
companies are trying to are trying to weasel out of what they need to pay, and they've been actually cutting people off and telling them, well, we can't we can't insure you anymore, and it's just it's of such magnitude that even we don't quite understand how big it is.
The scope is beyond. It's unimaginable. It's. Um, I mean, I seen some images that I dare say were comparable to some places, even like in Hiroshima or Nagasaki, where there's nothing left. The down to the foundation is gone. There's nothing there for com- entire residential areas. Row after row after row. There's nothing left, and so one
I've
thing
got
that I did hear that was kind of upsetting to me was that there was one of the rotary, was it rotary wing or no, it was a fixed wing aircraft from Canada that ended up hitting a civilian, one of these
Drone.
drones. and
drums. Yes.
and that's one thing that when these emergency workers are in there and they're trying to do their job, for looky loos, John and I used to have to deal with that all the time. You get people that want to come in and see, well, who's going on, whose house, you know you got to let the emergency people do their job and render things safe, which can take quite a bit of time. But you don't want to be interfering. And we seen on this past event where they actually had to use bulldozers to bulldoze vehicles out of the way that were blocking access for emergency vehicles. And We need to think about those kind of things, going into those kind of events.
There's been a lot of lessons learned here. Each of us has taken our, whatever that we glean from the experiences of others. We hope that the community, I know that there are a lot of outdoor outsourced resources coming into them, food, clothing, assistance, but a home is a home, and the rebuilding is going to take some time. To your point, we get texts from our friends. It's going to take me 3 months plus. It looks like a bomb hit this, and it's devastation beyond anything we've ever seen or experienced. And some have lost completely everything. That we also have friends and associates that live there, and we feel for them. And we would, there are ways to help, and you can use it by funding organizations that are out there, or contacting the friends and associates you have there, and asking what are their needs. And so I appreciate that we got to discuss this a little bit today. I know today our show is on number 45. We have moved on, and I appreciate um, the Stan uh, and John for having the tactical background. Sorry about that. My mind just goes quick. Um, in being a ranger, because it's just not all about other things, but it's protecting the lands, and they have that background. And there's so many, um, if they don't do their occupation right, then it becomes very frustrating. So we appreciate you guys' background, and all the things you did on the Navajo reservation and maybe other places. But today our subject matter is shapeshifters and the paranormal. And we're getting back to some of the content that we're going to be sharing throughout this new season. And I'm going to have Stan start it, some observations he's made lately, and some of the conversations we've had about shapeshifters.
Well, during the holiday, the movie Nosferatu came out, which is based on, similar to Bram Stoker's Dracula movie. And I watched that. I found it very entertaining. And I think from a cinematography standpoint, they did a really amazing job with that movie. And I would recommend it for anyone who enjoys a good horror movie. But in watching that, and from the background us three have that we come from in dealing with the paranormal, I've looked at that, and I did some of my own research into the phenomenon known as vampirism, and even the lycanthropy, uh, where you have throughout history, going back to the time of the Greeks and Roman Empire and other civilizations, uh, where you have references to um, people or entities being able to shapeshift from sometimes from a human form into that of a the form of an animal or other beings, and or vice versa. So um, obviously with the Dracula and Nosferatu uh, movies, I'm getting some interference on mine. I don't know if you guys are hearing that, but
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of interference. But
It's
anyway,
almost like somebody's breathing in.
yeah, sounds like Darth Vader's in the background. Yeah, it
That
does.
is
That
not me.
sounds
Is that
exactly
you,
what it
John?
sounds like. But anyway, uh, I'm thinking because with this, you know, in Dracula, he's capable of changing form. Obviously, the references to bats and changing into that of a bat, or wolves, or even mist. and non animal or biological forms. So it just depends, and but I got to thinking, I've witnessed this, what is known to the Navajo culture as a skinwalker, which is said to be a person who practices witchcraft, and they change from a human form into that of an animal, in which they are using a skin cloaked over themselves, and they're able to physically change form. And so um, really, with the Dracula movie, a, there's the idea of a vampire being able to change form. And so for me, it's really interesting. We tend to think like the shape shifting with different tribes, like the Navajo, that that is exclusive to their culture. But for me, in stepping back and looking at like the Bram Stoker and Nosferatu, um, maybe these entities that have been changing form, maybe they've been here all along. Maybe they are a dimensional being that are capable of transforming from one form to the other. And maybe they, like the extraterrestrial, maybe they've been here long before man even began occupying this little planet. Man tends to think of Earth as mine, or human beings. This is our planet, but if you look at the pictographs and petroglyphs and other images within cave systems and stuff that have been there hundreds and thousands of years, um, it suggests that these other entities have been there all along, even suggesting even before mankind. And there's the thoughts and theories that these extraterrestrials have been coming to and from Earth for a long, long, long time. That maybe they're in advance of the human race, like millions of years, and so anyway, I looked at this and I began thinking, what if these shape-shifting forms have been here all along, and we experience it even to this very day.
I
So
found it
anyway.
really I found it interesting, Stan, as you were speaking, we were all hearing the breathing, and the audience, a chat line here says, "I hear breathing too. I heard it gone now." It's
Darth Vader was listening in.
somebody, but that was very a really interesting moment.
That's
Uh,
funny.
John, did you want to share your story? What happened this weekend, or is that
Yeah, it was strange. Um, I was on my way Monday morning to a funeral, and the funeral was way over on the other side of the reservation. So I have to get up at dark 30 and get on the road while everything's still nighttime. And I'm driving, and I get up to an area called Indian Wells. And as I'm driving, uh, a vehicle, oncoming vehicle, I can see the headlights, and all of a sudden they hit their bright lights and they swerve into my lane. Now, this is just a little 2-lane highway with no shoulder. So once you get over to the right hand side, your wheels are in the dirt. And I'm thinking, is this guy drunk? And I'm starting to put my brakes on rather hard. And as he's swerving and his brights are on, I turn my brights on to let him know that, hey, you've got an oncoming vehicle. And he swerved the other direction. And, but when somebody's got their brights on, you can't see nothing. And all I saw was something black, and bang, I hit something. And I went down the road a ways, further because, but I pulled over where it was safe and took a look. And on my truck, there's a kind of a plastic on a Silverado. It has almost like little air scoops on the sides, and that thing got caught on something and ripped open, and so it was all torn out. And I got some tools out and had to stand there and work on it for a while, and take the screws out and remove the whole piece. And there was a dent in the rear fender. Um, so, of course, got a hold of insurance, got it taken in. We looked at it. One of the weird things is when I went back through that area, if it had been an animal, you would have seen it dead on the side of the road, or you would have seen blood. Um, there was nothing, absolutely nothing. Everything was clean.
There would have been some type of transfer hitting an animal at that
Yeah,
speed.
You would have
yeah.
been hair deposits, you
I
know.
figured I'd hit it right around 35, 40 miles an hour. And there's no hair transfer on the damaged portion. There's no blood on my vehicle. And a few people had asked me, "Are you sure what you hit was animal?" They said maybe you hit a skinwalker. And I'm going, I don't think so, but it's still within the realm of possibility because they've been hit before, and they do stand in the roadway sometimes. So just weird things. But I'm not going that direction. I think it was some kind of an animal, and whatever it was walked off on its own. And I have hit an elk before, and it rolled over and jumped up and took off running. And $3,000 worth of damage to my vehicle, at a low speed. And I actually had it all on video. So I don't know what it was. Whatever it was black. So I'm thinking it might have been a black yearling calf or something like that. But there's nothing to show for it and nothing on the side of the road. So whatever I hit survived. I wanted to say something else too with the sounds that are appearing on the broadcast.
Mhm.
Uh, when me and Stan did a show for a place out of Maine, uh, we talked about the subject of shapeshifting, and
Mhm.
during that time, the radio station said that their radio just went static.
Mhm.
There was nothing. Nobody could hear anything. And stayed like that for the entire time that we talked about that subject. And then as soon as we switched subjects, we came back on the air again. And we were both sitting by the same microphone talking to the hosts. And we were sitting in an area that had 5G. And so we couldn't explain it either. And then we've been talking at different conferences and had weird things happen with our sound system at the same time. So this isn't an unusual thing for us.
John, this summer we had the opportunity to go film um, up there in Navajo land. And the day I was traveling from Durango, Colorado, I get a phone call from a very close friend who's there I went to college with. And I had just stayed the night with her. And apparently, when I left, I get on the way over to you and Steve. um, she calls me and she's a little bit panicked. She goes, "My son had gone to the rodeo." And I said, "Yeah." And I goes, "There's a rodeo over there in Shiprock." She goes, "Yeah." Him and his friend went there to the rodeo. And on the way back, shapeshifter, skinwalker, she said, jumped in the back of his truck. And there was a woman an old woman that was standing on the side of the road, and they just thought it was an old woman. Then all of a sudden it shifted and then jumped in the back of the truck, and she was panicked. She says, "What do I do? What do I do?" This friend of his was just terrorized by the event, and I just said, "You know, at this point, you just let it be and smudge yourself, do some things that you're pray, whatever, you can do to alleviate those fears." At this point, he just had an encounter and have him write it down. So that those kind of things happen. And but to get a call, it sent chills down my spine. I'll admit it. You know.
Yeah, that kind of stuff actually happens a lot more than is ever reported. There are places on the Navajo reservation where the locals will not drive on the highways at night because they have something come up on the side of their vehicle and bang on the side, or something similar, or they see
Mhm,
things on the side of the road, and they just won't drive. They park their vehicles, they go inside and stay there. And it's not like, you have to understand, on the Navajo reservation, we don't have 7-Elevens and Pizza Huts and all the amenities that everybody else does. The trading post closes at 8 o'clock at night, and if you don't have your supplies, that's it. You're going to wait till morning. So that kind of stuff seems to happen a lot.
mhm, mhm.
I think, I had brought this up in the past that, my sister has this saying that uh, paranormal is normal. And I think I follow along those lines too. I think a lot of times we experience paranormal phenomenon, and but again, depending on how we've been raised and our religious influences and things like that, the church, a lot of times we end up dismissing those events or incidents, and coming up with some type of uh, you know everyday explanation for it. And yeah, the sound is still going on over
Yeah, I noticed
there.
that. It's like,
The breathing, yeah. So, but
talk
anyway,
through
these
some
things do
more.
happen.
Uh-huh.
So it's just very interesting.
Stan, could you tell us a story that you remember? Martin, we sat down with him, and he told us when he was a young ranger, uh, what he encountered up in the Kanta area.
Okay, sure. So um, this former ranger, he was one of the early rangers, and there was an incident. He said where there was a ranger that had encountered uh, a a shapeshifter, and I don't know. He didn't really elaborate if this was National Park Service ranger or a Navajo ranger or Arizona ranger. There's a lot of different types of rangers, but he said that he had this ranger had gone home in the evening, and he came running into the house to his wife and his family and exclaimed that uh, I shot this skinwalker. I killed the skinwalker. And so he ended up, he says, I have it in the back of my truck. And so the family members went out there to his unit. And I'm not going to get too graphic about it, but there was the body, a human body, in the back of that vehicle that had been shot. And so um, back in that day, there was a lot of incidents like that had occurred, and that left people wondering, you know, um, what was going on. So
Yeah, and he said that when that guy shot that thing, it had the shape of a dog that
Mm.
was running alongside his vehicle, and so he shot it and and threw it in the back of the truck, and then later on it changed. Um, so there's lots and lots of stories like that where families have had encounters where something was shot. Um, we had one family that that came in, and wondered, what can we do? Because the husband had shot what looked like a coyote, and they it ended up turning into a human form, and the ambulance was called and picked it up, and, and all the Navajo staff were chased out of the ER, and the doctors actually saved that person, and they says, "What do we do? We shot a skinwalker. Uh, what's going to happen to us?" And then in talking with them, at the end, they happened to mention, "Oh yeah, we recognized the guy. We knew who he was." And so we told them, "Well, that's good because according to Navajo culture, if you know the identity of one and you go up to them and confront them with this information, um, that they'll die within a short period of time. Usually they say 3 days, and I've actually seen that happen before. So they felt a lot better after they left. Um, that's kind of like having an ace in your back pocket, the next time you go play cards. So, but those kind of things do happen, and we did confirm that story. Stan was able to talk to a couple of people that had been working at the hospital that night, that confirmed that did happen.
That's an interesting story. There's so many stories like that on the reservation, even up in the Uinta Basin. I think I've told the story once or twice before. I was with a medicine practitioner that lives right there, just adjacent to Skinwalker Ranch, and I went for dinner along with one of the cast members, Jim Morse. And he says, he called this the path of the Skinwalker. And I guess on the reservation, there's a path that exists. What was really interesting is I looked down the road and I saw a shadow, and I lost my ability to balance. Like I was like I felt like I was gonna fall over, and I
Like
became
vertigo.
vertigo. Yeah, wheezy, and was getting sick to my stomach. And so he immediately came over and he says, "Got to get you in the house and do some medicine work on you." And he did. And whatever was trying to take over did a pretty good job. And I wasn't say I was completely in trance, but I was like I felt like I was going somewhere. And I don't know if those kind of things have been heard. Um, we've mic'd our phones and we still hear the breathing. So this has been a very interesting experience for us as well, audience, because they're responding to us as well. Every time you gentlemen talk, I mute my mic, but okay. We're having a moment, right?
Yeah. Um, you know, these kind of phenomenon uh, are capable of listening in and zeroing in
Mhm.
to conversations that we have in this physical plane,
Yeah.
and so that's why John and I are very cautious about uh, even saying the word skinwalker at times, because we feel that there is a there's a presence, there's an entity there that's listening in to our conversations and stuff. So at times we do use caution with those kind of things, and I think it's something just like what we mentioned with the wildfires earlier. It's something to be aware of. Safety and this also extends into the paranormal. There's some of these negative entities that are capable of causing harm and disrupting our lives. And John and I always practice various safety measures uh, in regards to the paranormal. It's just become second nature over the years of investigating this stuff, for a long time, and so it's something to be aware of.
Yeah, it's always good preparedness, right? That was been the subject matter here, and we can prepare ourselves spiritually, emotionally, and physically.
Right.
And I think part of the paranormal world, a lot of people kind of look at your stories, and you start talking about this type of paranormal stories, they kind of look at you with a, cockeyed and going, okay, what have you been smoking? What have you been doing?
Right.
But with the Native American
Well,
world we live in, it's a very spiritual world, and we do have negative and positive experiences.
they do. People are skeptical, and there will be those that laugh and ridicule and make fun of others that have these experiences until they have an experience themselves. And then there's a epiphany and an awakening, so to speak. Once they have their own experience that at times can be traumatizing. And you know, I just wish people would be more respectful of each other and those individuals that have these kind of experiences. So
There it goes again.
yeah, it's still going, but oh well. we
Oh,
just
We just we'll
we'll
deal with
just
it
we'll
afterwards.
just deal with it. Yeah.
This makes for an exciting show. Yeah. You know, I think it is an interdimensional being. I think all cultures have their own interdimensional shape-shifting stories, and like you said, it goes back to the Roman times with, the Dracula story and so on and so forth. Um, there's such an interest in the macabre, and people love to tune into this type of thing. This makes for kind of an exciting show, doesn't it, today, having that breathing come in today from wherever it's coming, but we'll take care of it afterwards, right, gentlemen?
well,
Yeah.
these things happen, and
Yeah,
it's a lot
yeah.
of times there isn't no answer for it. I mean, we look for explanations like, the technical side of things where you mute your mics and things like that, and it's still there, and there's no explanation as to why that would be occurring. But these things do happen, and it's our world, and but John and I and you, Michelle, we don't live our lives in fear of these things. We are very spiritual. We're very strong in our faith in our Creator, and a lot of times you have to put those things in our Creator's hands for Him to deal with, because there's nothing that our Creator can't handle and can't deal with. He's everything. So it is what it is. For me, it's one of those interesting phenomenons, and something to be aware of. You know, I recently was in the past few days. I've been talking to a good friend of John and I.
Mhm.
His name is Dusty. He was an investigator that assisted John and I on different investigations, and he lives in Texas, and he sent me some photographs of something that was captured on camera near one of his deer feeders. And it is really interesting, a photograph that I'm going to be sharing with you guys, and to kind of get your feedback on. But these things do happen. There's things that happen all the time, and a lot of times the reason and understanding of why it's happening escapes us, and we don't understand these things fully. But they do happen.
I was on a podcast show with a gentleman up here in the Uinta Basin. He had done other shows and everything, and I was out of town actually, staying in a hotel, and I got into a conference room, and everything on my side was perfect, and even on the show he kept saying, "What is that? What is that?" He thought I was experiencing too, and I go, "What is what?" And he goes, "Oh, on my end, this I am getting freaked out, Michelle, because every time you say UFO or UAP, it messes with our audio, it messes with the picture, and you're not having any problems technically over there." And I said, "No, I'm perfectly calm." And it every time we would talk about our UFO stories, it would start to react on his side, and he would react. He was literally freaked out about that podcast. Um,
Yeah. Before we get too far, got one more story from the res. Happened recently. I think I might have told this one already, but we'll tell it again since this is the appropriate time. I had a podcaster come up from Phoenix to ride with me,
oh,
and he was all the way from here to Chinle. He kept talking about, oh, I want to see a skinwalker. I sure love to see a skinwalker. And finally, about midway there, I told him, I says, quit talking about it. I says, you're going to manifest this thing and it's going to show up. And, he didn't know. His name was Patrick. He had no idea. So we have him driving, me in the front passenger, cameraman sitting in the back, recording our conversation on film. And we had another woman passenger from Phoenix. And as we did our stops all along the way and talked about the different cases, we got back down, coming back toward where I live in Loop, and we went through Delcon. And Patrick says my GoPro on the dash went out. Says the battery died. So he says, that's okay. We don't need it. So we went another 10, 12 miles down the road. All of a sudden he slammed on his brakes and he says, did you see that? And I says, no, I'm not driving. I'm not paying attention. We're in a conversation. And if you drive all the time and you have a chance not to drive, you don't look at the road. So I said, I didn't see anything. And he asked the cameraman, and he says, the cameraman says, no, I was recording you guys talking. And it was getting dark, or it was already dark. And he said, I saw an animal on four legs run across the road in front of my truck. We almost hit it. And there was an oncoming car on the other side that almost hit it too. And he says that thing zipped over the road so fast, it was less than a second. And so we went back. He didn't want to stop. I was thinking, we should go back and and take a look. And he didn't want to stop. And I asked him, what did you see? And he says, I saw the rear leg of a kangaroo and a long tail. And on the end of the tail, it had three like things coming out, almost like a pitchfork. And he says, and it ran across the road, only like a half second. So we did the math and we said 0.75. We estimated that animal was running at 87 miles an hour based on 0.75 seconds. The fastest animal in northern Arizona is a pronghorn antelope. It can get a burst of speed up to 50 miles an hour. Fastest animal in the world is a cheetah, and it can get to 60 miles an hour. So whatever it was, and when I got back, family told me, they says, "Oh yeah, they checked with their friends and they said, yeah, there's one of these half man, half kangaroos running around on that road, and it's been seen by other people who have reported it." So somewhere along the line, this skinwalker got a hold of a kangaroo hide, and I've had people report it up on Hopi too. So yeah, there's some strange things going on, but we may be the first people that actually clock the speed of one of these. And 87 miles an hour is nothing to laugh about. I mean, that's moving.
You have to remember that John, in his career, was one of the leading traffic accident investigators for the Navajo Reservation. Uh, so he's able to do the calculations and the math and those kind of things related to these kind of investigations, which has really been a godsend for the kind of investigations we do.
Yeah, I was actually a what they call a Class 3 technical accident investigator for the state of Arizona. I was certified. And I also worked with a gentleman who was the top reconstructionist in the state for Highway Patrol. And I worked with him side by side for 4 years, and he taught me what he knew about reconstruction. And so, yeah, I've got a lot of experience doing accidents, and uh,
John, were
rather
there any
interesting.
protocols? Were there any protocols like when you were given the X Files per se? Let's call it, in that context. Were there protocols you guys had to, as rangers, had to follow when you did come across these type of cases with shape shifting experiences and stories from the Navajo Nation, the individuals that had these experiences? Did the department come out with any written type of protocols?
It was they had to be professionally investigated. We use the laws of legal evidence to look at these investigations. So we had to have physical evidence if we could,
Okay.
ground effects, footprints, things like that. And so it wasn't just anecdotal stories. In this case, we didn't get back to that location for about a week. And after we got back to my house, I ended up smoking everybody and explaining intent to them, and trying to get them some protection so that when they went home, this thing might not follow them. Um, but yeah, just they were pretty freaked out by that incident.
When
And
Well,
like,
John and I
uh-huh.
began doing UFO investigation, we had reached out to organizations like MUFON and even Robert Bigelow's group. You
Mhm.
know, they already had established investigators of the paranormal and supernatural, and so we began meeting with them, discussing, their policies, their procedures, and how they went about investigating these kind of cases. So some of that would be assimilated over into criminal investigation techniques and applying that. We were kind of thrown into this one day, and we had to learn to swim in all of it. We had to figure it out.
Yeah, there was a network show called Dark Winds that was produced that, I think it was Robert Redford and another producer had produced that TV series, which got into some of this, the witchcraft, the skinwalkers, and other things. It was very fascinating. I was quite
Based
surprised.
on Tony Hillerman's
Yeah,
books.
exactly.
John can talk a little bit more about that real quick.
Yeah, yeah. It's really interesting, today we had an exciting show. We had Darth Vader join us,
Yeah.
and we can look at it and just smile, these things. But one of the things I'm saying is when that breathing would come in, I have kind of like a sixth sense. I start to get really achy in my neck and back here. That's my kind of a warning signal. So physically, Right now it's so tense, but it's starting to relax. But when that was occurring on the air, it was almost like I wanted to grab a Tylenol and relax the muscles. So who's to say we weren't having an event happening, a
Yeah,
paranormal.
time for some bitter medicine.
Exactly.
Re- Really quick, I want to say thank you for the comments on the book. Somebody had said they had just finished the book, The Paranormal Ranger, and I appreciate all the support in that. It's done beyond what I could have ever imagined with that. So thank you for that.
Thank you for actually writing the book and telling of your stories and share, because it's really hard sometimes to put yourself out there, but people are very, very interested in the subject matter and what you guys have done in your past and what we've all three have done in our past. I get so many comments. Somebody recognized, me being on this podcast show the other day, and they were so excited. They go, "Oh, I love this stuff," because it not only teaches me about the paranormal world, which I'm really into, but it also teaches about the culture and the things that have gone on. And I'm really proud that you guys can talk about your culture openly. So that was a really positive comment that came to us. And I told them about your book, Stan, and I said, go read
Thank
The
you.
Paranormal Ranger. That'll give you a more detailed insight to what these guys did in their field and during their tenure, not just as law enforcement, but the X Files that they had to handle. And it wasn't a
Al-
volunteer thing either.
Also, the Unsolved Mysteries episode.
Yeah.
I think it's season 3, episode 5 on
Yeah.
Netflix. It's still there, and I think for many people, it'll give them some insight about the investigations that John and I did as Rangers, but also to give them an overview of what the three of us kind of have done.
Yeah.
And
Well,
very
And
there's
and one of the things about that show is when they approached us to make that episode, we told them that we would not do it unless they portrayed us correctly.
like,
And they bent over backwards trying to make sure that everything was done properly
and
and
accurately as far as the
and
investigation.
accurately. Yeah. So that's the one thing that really stands out. Plus, if if you like film, these guys cinematography is outstanding in this one. Um,
love it.
so so yeah, really a really good watch.
Well, guys, we're at the top of the hour. We want to thank everybody who came on in our chat room and on the podcast. We really are looking forward to a new season. We've got really some really cool things coming up. We're working on a platform as well. But we appreciate mostly the viewership and the comments that we get and the people who come on and find this very, very interesting. We are putting ourselves out there because of the experiences that we have had. Um, we don't cloak it with any scientific methodologies. Although I'm sure there will be a point in time we'll do some investigations that we'll need to, but we're pretty candid about our experiences, and some of us have been around the culture, some of us are learning, and we're still having experiences. So look forward to having y'all come back. Same
A
time.
shout out, a
A
shout
shout-
out to Darth Vader for joining us. And on a serious note, please your prayers to those people in
yes,
Los Angeles and California.
that's right. Thank you, Stan. And John, appreciate you being here and for being a ranger and bringing me on. It's been very, very exciting and eventful in my life. So we'll move forward, and you guys make it a great day and a great week. We'll see you
Yeah,
next.
thank you. Thank you,
Bye, everybody.
everybody.
Bye bye.